before Badlands has even arrived, some players are threatening to boycott it. This comes in response to the announcement that although we're getting Basebuilding, it will be exclusive to the Badlands DLC, and many players have expressed how they feel about this. Spoiler, it's not great. So here I'm going to break it down and explain a few important things you might not know. If you like the video, please leave a like or a subscribe, it really helps me out. But without further ado, let's get into the video.
If I get this, he's gonna be so pissed. Even the wolves are pissed.
I have an extremely important piece at the end of this video, so please stick around to hear it because I genuinely do want your opinion. The moment it was announced that some of Badlands' new mechanics would only be available on a DLC map, the debate started almost immediately. Some players argued that locking gameplay behind paid content was anti-consumer. Others said it was exactly how DLC should work. And honestly, both sides make good points. For years, DayZ players have been asking for improvements to systems like base building. So when something that looks like a major improvement arrives alongside a paid expansion, it's easy to understand why some people feel frustrated. If a mechanic makes the game better, shouldn't everyone benefit from it? After all, we all bought DayZ. It's a reasonable argument, but I also think it's looking at the situation from the wrong angle, because I don't think the real question is whether mechanics should be free. I think the question is, what are you actually paying for when you buy a DayZ expansion? Most people would probably answer a map. In fact, a lot of people answered a map and said the map should be enough, but I don't know if that's true. I think a map is just the content, whereas the content is the value. Think about it for a second. If Bohemia released Badlands tomorrow, but it played exactly like Chernarus, had the same progression, the same mechanics, the same gameplay loop, and the same reason to survive, would many people actually spend money on it? Some would, of course. People always want to support DayZ, especially when they love the game, regardless of what it brings. In fact, I know many people who, although they didn't like snow maps, still bought Sakhal just to support. But this kind of ties into the problem. I don't think people should be doing that. I don't think you should be buying the map just to support DayZ. Like, it's a cool thing to do, but it's not the point. You should be buying it because it's a good map, because it offers a lot, because you feel like you can't play DayZ without it. And that is exactly why I think the Sakhal expansion is such an interesting case study. I've always thought of Sakhal as what I'd call an iceberg update. On the surface, all anyone saw was a snowy map, a much smaller snowy map than the rest of the official ones. But underneath the surface was everything that actually made the expansion feel substantial. New survival mechanics, environmental systems, cold weather gameplay, hundreds of new assets, new clothing, weapons, animations, visual improvements, sounds, engine work, and countless smaller changes that most players never even think about. Not to mention an actual boat. The map was just the visible part. The real value was everything hidden beneath it. Then something interesting happened. It all released for free. They released most of the things that made the DLC special weeks before the DLC even landed. Assets became available for the wider game and modding community, boats weren't kept as exclusive to DLC, core improvements benefited every player, whether they own the DLC or not. That's great news if you never intend to buy Sakhal. You received more content without spending another penny. And from a technical standpoint going forward, releasing a lot of these things for free, especially considering some of them were core mechanic changes, makes a lot of sense. It also boosts the overall player base because the DayZ devs and BI in general want more people to play DayZ, so they want to keep benefiting the main game, and releasing this free also helps that. It gets people playing, and it did, because DayZ broke all kind of records, and all this content changed even every modded map. New clothing, new guns, new assets, new mechanics. It was incredible when Sakhal dropped. It gave us a lot. But there's another side to that story that people rarely talk about. Every time something unique leaves an expansion, the expansion becomes just a little less unique. I'm not saying free updates are bad. They're one of the reasons DayZ has survived for so long. In fact, DayZ has probably received more free support than most games ever do. Over the years, we've had new weapons, balancing changes, engine improvements, graphic upgrades, animations, audio improvements, infected updates, though not the one that everybody kind of wanted, and countless quality of life features, all without paying another penny. But the downfall to this is now that people are expecting free updates. People are not just expecting it, but you go to their Twitter and you will see people demanding updates. But I think there's a balance, because eventually you have to ask yourself what the DLC is actually selling. If every new mechanic eventually comes to every map, if every new asset appears everywhere, if every new vehicle, survival system and gameplay feature eventually becomes part of the base game, then what exactly are players buying? Just terrain? That's a much harder product to sell. That's where I think the decision often becomes emotional instead of practical. People will say improved base building is a core mechanic, it shouldn't be behind a paywall. Yeah, maybe that's right, there's a lot of logic to that. But where does the logic stop? What if Badlands introduces a completely new survival mechanic? Should that become free? What about motorbikes? What about the new environmental systems? What about underground exploration? Every mechanic eventually becomes something players want. If player demand alone decides whether something belongs in the base game, then there's almost nothing left that an expansion can offer exclusively. And if expansions stop feeling exclusive, why would anybody buy them? And there's two main things here, and one of them really affects the player. First of all, this isn't defending businesses for the sake of it. It's just recognizing how they work. Bohemia isn't our friend. They're a business. They're making a service, a product that we buy and we engage with and we pay them, and they continue to keep it up to date, to keep the players and to keep people buying. It's give and take. Bohemia isn't a charity. It's a studio that's somehow still supporting a game released over a decade ago. Continued development has to be funded somehow, and historically that's exactly what expansions have done across the industry. They don't just add land, they add reasons to experience that land. Ironically, I think Sakhal proved that, and its low numbers are an example of it. When Frostline launched, you weren't really paying for the snowy island, you were paying for an entire ecosystem of new ideas working together. That's what made it feel exciting. That's what justified buying it. As more of those ideas became available outside of Sakhal, the map itself naturally became less distinctive. I'm not saying that it was entirely responsible for its players' numbers, because there were obviously other factors, but I do think it weakened one of the biggest reasons people had to own it. And then eventually, once the hype died down, the numbers dropped to low levels. And yeah, look, they've slowly picked up over time, and I do understand that this is a natural progression of most DLCs once the hype eventually dies out. But this one was quite hard and quite abrupt, and it affects the players who had bought it, because it's not a single player experience. You can't really play DayZ properly as a single player. You need people online, you need the bases, you need the interactions, and in trying to make the expansion benefit everyone, Bohemia also reduced what made it feel special to the people who actually bought it, and they also reduced the playability by limiting how many players would actually be on it. That's the trade-off. And here's the uncomfortable reality. If every expansion gives away the mechanics for free, future expansions become much harder to justify. Not because maps are bad, but because players start seeing them as nothing more than scenery. And I also think it ignores one of the biggest issues and biggest complaints I have about this specific thing. So I am completely fine, and I understand why base building has to be locked behind a paywall. These are new buildings, new assets, and the new mechanics will only work with these buildings. The assets are only designed to fit these buildings, and these buildings are only available on the DLC. I think the core issue here is that although this new base building mechanic is really cool and I'm excited for it, I still don't think it takes away the main problem. DayZ base building fucking sucks. I still think that we should be asking for them to update core base building on every other map. They haven't done something about the main issue. The main issue is we still have these giant ugly fences that barely fit anything. And this new system should absolutely improve the new DLC. It should stay on the DLC, and it should be a really cool thing that you can only access on this DLC. However, the DayZ devs have used the same assets for buildings across 3 maps. It's actually been a point of contention for a lot of players. Let's use that to our advantage. Let's introduce something that we can use to rely on it. It doesn't have to be extensive as the new system. We don't need a brand new base building system. We just need a few tweaks to make it feel better. A few smaller fences, a few things that just actually fit the map and don't look ridiculous and old. It will stop the discussion forever, and everybody will have a really good time. Then we can all drink lots and eat cake. So yeah, I do think that people are kind of arguing the wrong position here. I don't think the argument should ever be this new system shouldn't be DLC only, because I honestly genuinely do believe it should be DLC only. It should be locked behind a paywall, and when you pay, you should get your money's worth. Money is not easy to get for most people. If you buy something and then you buy additional content, you should be rewarded for that. But this is irrelevant. I don't think this new addition solves the original problem. I think it just highlights how much that they know that this is a problem problem and they just haven't changed it, and I don't know why. But look, I think the new map looks incredible and the new systems look really cool, and I'm really looking forward to playing them. And I'm always willing to be told that I'm wrong, or I've missed something, or I've made a mistake. I'm just a player like everybody else, so if you have a different one, please let me know in the comments. And for more DayZ content, click here, or for something else, click here. And as always, until next time.